Jake Morrison sat alone in his small research station on Europa and looked at the ice samples under his microscope. The 34-year-old scientist had been living on this frozen moon for 8 months now. His thick brown beard had grown longer than ever before, and he kept it neat and clean, even though no one was around to see it. He hummed old songs from Earth while he worked, and sometimes talked to his maintenance robot that he had named Buddy. The station was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines keeping him alive in the cold vacuum of space. Jake did not mind being alone because his work was important. He studied tiny life forms in the ice that might help humans understand how life could exist on other worlds. Each day he would take new samples from deep beneath the surface and examine them carefully. Outside his small window, Jake could see the swirling clouds of Jupiter hanging in the black sky like a giant marble. The sight never got old, even after all these months. Sometimes he would stop his work just to stare at the massive planet and think about how far he was from home. Jake had volunteered for this assignment because he wanted to make a difference. Earth was expanding into new star systems, and they needed to know what they might find out there. His research could help future colonies survive on worlds that seemed impossible to live on. He felt proud of his work even when the loneliness got heavy. Far across the galaxy in a different part of space, a very different kind of meeting was taking place. The Veltar Empire ruled over dozens of star systems with an iron fist. Their ships were fast, and their weapons were deadly. They had built their power by crushing anyone who might challenge them before those challenges could grow strong. "Hi, Commander." Kethvar stood in his command chamber looking at reports about human expansion. The tall reptilian alien had scales that looked like dark metal and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. His claws tapped against the metal table as he read about human colonies spreading to 3 new systems in just 2 years. The humans worried him more than other species the Empire had encountered. Most aliens expanded slowly and carefully. Humans seemed to adapt to any environment they found. They built homes on ice worlds and desert planets with equal success. This kind of flexibility made them dangerous in ways that pure military strength could not match. Kethvar called for his best assassin. Zara Vel Nash was 7 feet tall, with dark green scales that shifted color like oil on water. She had served the Empire for 15 years and had never failed a single mission. Her claws could cut through titanium, and her speed was legendary, even among her own people. When Zara entered the command chamber, she moved with the fluid grace of a predator. She had killed the leaders of 17 different species over the years. Each elimination had been clean and precise, with no evidence left behind. The Empire used her when they wanted to send a message without starting a war. Kethvar showed Zara the intelligence reports about Jake Morrison. The human scientist was working alone on Europa, studying alien life forms. His research had already led to breakthroughs in understanding how life could survive in extreme environments. If humans learned to live anywhere they chose, the Empire would face a threat unlike any they had seen before. The mission was simple, according to Kethvar. Zara would travel to Europa and eliminate the human scientist. She would make it look like an accident, so Earth would not know their man had been murdered. A life support failure or equipment malfunction would be perfect. The message would be clear without being obvious. Zara studied the files about Jake Morrison with professional interest. He appeared harmless enough, living alone with only a maintenance robot for company. The humans seemed more interested in tiny organisms than in building weapons or planning conquests. Still, she had learned never to underestimate any target, no matter how peaceful they seemed. The assassin noted Jake's daily routines and the layout of his station. She memorized every detail about his equipment and security systems. The research station had basic defenses, but nothing that would stop a Veltar infiltration specialist. Getting inside would be the easy part. What puzzled Zara was why this particular human had been chosen for elimination. She had killed generals and weapons designers and political leaders. Jake Morrison was just a scientist looking at ice samples. Yet the High Commander seemed more concerned about this lone researcher than about entire human battle fleets. Kethvar explained that military threats could be countered with military responses. The danger Jake represented was different. His work was teaching humans how to survive and thrive in places where other species would die. That kind of knowledge could not be destroyed with weapons. It had to be stopped at the source. Back on Europa, Jake made an exciting discovery in his latest ice samples. Under his microscope, he could see tiny organisms that seemed to be communicating with each other across impossible distances. The creatures appeared to send signals through dimensions that normal physics said should not exist. Jake started a video log to record his findings. He stroked his magnificent beard as he explained what he was seeing and what it might mean for science. These microscopic life forms could change everything humans understood about communication and space travel. He was so excited that he forgot to encrypt the transmission properly. The video signal traveled through space and was intercepted by Veltar listening stations. Intelligence analysts watched the bearded human scientist explain his discovery with growing alarm. This was exactly the kind of breakthrough that made humans so dangerous. They found solutions where other species saw only problems. The intercepted transmission was sent directly to High Commander Kethvar. After watching Jake's enthusiastic explanation, the commander knew his fears had been correct. This human had stumbled onto something that could revolutionize interstellar travel. The threat level was even higher than originally estimated. Kethvar contacted Zara and moved up her mission timeline. She would leave immediately for Europa instead of waiting for the next transport cycle. Every day the human scientist continued his work was another day closer to a breakthrough that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Zara received her new orders without complaint. She had eliminated targets on shorter notice before. Her stealth ship was always ready for immediate departure. Within hours she was traveling through hyperspace toward the Jupiter system and her unsuspecting target. Jake continued his research, unaware that death was racing toward him through the void. He carefully prepared new slides and adjusted his equipment while humming songs from his childhood. His beard caught the light from his instruments as he bent over his work. He felt happy and fulfilled, knowing that his discoveries would help his people explore the stars. The stage was set for a meeting that would change both their lives forever. A human scientist with a magnificent beard and a reptilian assassin were about to cross paths in the most unlikely way possible. Neither could imagine how their encounter would reshape the future of multiple civilizations across the galaxy. Zara's stealth ship dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter and immediately activated its cloaking systems. The sleek vessel became invisible to both human sensors and the naked eye as it glided silently toward Europa. She had made this approach hundreds of times before on different worlds with different targets. This should be just another routine elimination. The assassin spent several hours studying the research station's exterior defenses, while her ship maintained a safe distance. Jake's facility was small and functional, with basic shields and life support systems. There were no weapons, platforms, or military escorts. The human government had not bothered to protect their scientist because they saw no reason why anyone would want to harm him. Zara found the lack of security almost insulting. Did humans really think they could expand across the galaxy without making enemies along the way? Most species learned to guard their important people after the first few assassinations. Humans seemed naive about the dangers that waited in the dark between stars. The Veltar assassin began her infiltration approach as Europa's pale surface rotated below. She had studied the moon's composition and knew that her ship's advanced materials could phase through the ice and metal of the station's hull. Getting inside would be silent and invisible, just as she preferred. Jake was working late in his laboratory when Zara began her final approach. He had been examining his latest samples for 12 straight hours, and his eyes were getting tired. The microscopic organisms seemed more active than usual tonight, and he wanted to understand why before he stopped for rest. His magnificent beard had grown even fuller over the past few weeks of isolation. Jake took pride in keeping it well groomed, even though no one was around to appreciate his efforts. He had brought special oils and combs from Earth and used them religiously every morning. The routine helped him feel human in the cold emptiness of Space. Buddy, the maintenance robot, rolled around the station, performing its nightly checks on life support and equipment. The little machine had become Jake's constant companion during the long months alone. He had programmed it with a basic personality that made conversations more interesting, even though he knew it was just responding to voice patterns. Zara phased through the station's outer hull without triggering any alarms. Her reptilian form moved like liquid shadow through the corridors as she made her way toward the main laboratory. Every step was calculated and silent. Her claws remained retracted to avoid leaving marks that might be discovered later. The assassin paused outside Jake's lab to observe her target through the transparent door. The human was bent over his microscope, completely absorbed in his work. His thick brown beard caught the light from various instruments, creating an almost artistic effect. Zara had never seen facial hair before, since her species could not grow any. In Vel Tar culture, physical appearance was strictly controlled by genetics and military regulations. Every warrior looked similar, with minor variations in scale, color, and size. The concept of growing decorative hair on one's face was completely foreign to her. Yet something about Jake's beard struck her as oddly appealing. Zara activated her personal cloaking device and stepped into the laboratory. She could kill the human in seconds with her claws, or make his death look accidental by damaging life support systems. The mission should be over in minutes, with no evidence left behind. Yet she found herself hesitating as she watched Jake work. The human scientist was humming softly while he adjusted his equipment. He seemed genuinely happy, despite being alone on a frozen moon millions of miles from home. Most people Zara had encountered in her career were driven by fear, or greed, or anger. This human appeared motivated by simple curiosity about the universe around him. Jake suddenly looked up from his microscope and stared directly at the spot where Zara stood cloaked. For a moment, she thought her equipment had malfunctioned, and he could see her. Then she realized he was just stretching his neck after hours of hunching over instruments. His beard moved as he rolled his shoulders to work out the stiffness. Something made Zara deactivate her cloaking device. She told herself it was to get a better look at the laboratory before choosing the best method of elimination. In truth, she was curious about how the human would react to seeing a 7-foot-tall reptilian warrior appear in his personal space. Most targets screamed or tried to run. Jake blinked several times when Zara materialized in front of him. He looked confused, rather than frightened, as his brain tried to process what he was seeing. A massive alien stood in his laboratory, wearing advanced armor and carrying weapons that could level buildings. This was definitely not part of his normal routine. Instead of panicking, Jake set down his instruments and stood up slowly. He was much shorter than Zara, but he did not seem intimidated by her size or obvious lethality. His first words were not a scream for help or a demand to know who she was. He simply said that she was definitely not in his appointment book. Zara stared at the human in bewilderment. She had killed experienced soldiers who showed more fear than this lone scientist. Jake appeared more curious than concerned about having a deadly alien appear in his private laboratory. His complete lack of appropriate terror was deeply unsettling to someone trained in intimidation tactics. The words came out of Zara's mouth before she could stop them. She told Jake that he had a nice beard. The compliment was completely outside her mission parameters and made no tactical sense whatsoever. Yet the human's facial hair had captured her attention in ways she could not explain to herself. Jake's face lit up with genuine pleasure at the unexpected praise. It had been 8 months since anyone had commented on his grooming efforts. He ran his fingers through his beard and thanked the tall alien for noticing his hard work. Most people back on Earth thought his facial hair was just an excuse to avoid shaving. What followed was perhaps the most awkward conversation in the history of interstellar relations. Jake offered his uninvited guest coffee, even though he had no idea if aliens could drink human beverages. Zara had never heard of coffee, but found herself curious about this mysterious liquid that humans seemed to value. The assassin tried to remember why she was supposed to eliminate this peculiar creature. Her mission briefing had painted humans as a dangerous and unpredictable threat to galactic stability. Yet Jake seemed more interested in showing her his latest discoveries than in questioning why a heavily armed reptilian warrior had materialized in his laboratory. Jake began explaining his research with infectious enthusiasm. He showed Zara the microscopic organisms that appeared to communicate across dimensional barriers. His excitement was so genuine that even a trained killer found herself drawn into his explanations. The human stroked his beard thoughtfully as he described the implications of his findings. Zara realized that her mission had just become infinitely more complicated. Killing Jake Morrison was supposed to be simple and clean. Instead, she found herself engaged in the most interesting conversation she had experienced in years. The human's passion for discovery was unlike anything in her violent career. The two unlikely companions spent the next several hours discussing science and exploration. While the research station orbited silently around Jupiter, neither mentioned the obvious fact that one of them was there to kill the other. Both seemed content to pretend this was a normal social visit between friends. As the hours passed, Zara began to understand why her commanders feared humans so much. It was not their weapons or their ships that made them dangerous. It was their ability to find wonder and possibility in situations where other species would see only threats and problems. Jake had turned a potential assassination into an educational opportunity. The assassin found herself forgetting about her mission as Jake shared stories about Earth and his childhood dreams of exploring the stars. His beard moved expressively as he talked and laughed. Zara had never met anyone who seemed so genuinely happy to be alive and curious about everything around them. When Jake finally asked if she was hungry, Zara realized that dawn was breaking over Europa's icy surface. They had talked through the entire night without her once considering completing her assignment. The human had somehow disarmed one of the galaxy's deadliest killers with nothing more than coffee and conversation. The mission that was supposed to last minutes had stretched into hours. Zara knew that her commanders would expect a status report soon, yet she found herself reluctant to end her time with this strange bearded human who had turned her world upside down with simple kindness and genuine curiosity about her people and culture. Jake's enthusiasm for his research proved more infectious than any disease Zara had encountered in her travels across the galaxy. As he showed her the dimensional communicating organisms under his microscope, she found herself genuinely fascinated by the implications. Her Veltar education had included advanced xenobiology, and she immediately recognized the revolutionary potential of his discovery. The tiny creatures seemed to exist partially in normal space, and partially in dimensions that most scientists considered purely theoretical. They could send information instantly across vast distances without regard for the speed of light or other physical limitations. Jake had stumbled onto something that could change everything about interstellar communication and travel. Zara watched Jake work with growing amazement. The human approached problems from angles that no Veltar scientist would consider. Where her people saw rigid rules and limitations, Jake saw possibilities and opportunities. His beard moved as he talked through complex theories with the casual ease of someone discussing the weather. After several hours of shared research, Jake looked up from his instruments and asked a question that stopped Zara cold. He wanted to know if her people had sent her to kill him because of this discovery. His voice was calm and matter-of-fact, as if he were asking about lunch plans rather than assassination attempts. The directness of the question caught Zara completely off guard. Most targets either never realized they were marked for death, or spent their final moments pleading for mercy. Jake seemed to have figured out her purpose and accepted it. With the same scientific curiosity he applied to everything else in his universe. Zara found herself unable to lie to those honest brown eyes. She explained the Veltar Empire's philosophy of eliminating potential threats before they could become actual dangers. Her people had survived and prospered by crushing innovation wherever they found it. Peace came through preventing others from developing technologies that might challenge Veltar supremacy. Jake listened to her explanation, while stroking his magnificent beard in what she was learning was his thinking pose. He did not seem angry or afraid even after learning that his entire species was considered a threat by a powerful galactic empire. Instead, he appeared sad that first contact between their civilizations had to happen through violence rather than cooperation. The human asked why she had told him the truth instead of simply completing her mission. Zara struggled to find an answer that made sense even to herself. Something about Jake's openness and genuine kindness had disarmed her more effectively than any weapon or defense system. She had never met anyone who responded to mortal danger with curiosity rather than fear. Jake made a suggestion that left Zara speechless with its audacity. Instead of killing him, why did she not stay and help him figure out how to make his discovery benefit everyone, including her people? The idea of turning an assassination mission into a collaborative research project was so fundamentally human that it made her head spin. In Veltar culture, when faced with a deadly threat, you fought until you won, or died trying. The concept of offering cooperation to an enemy was not just foreign, but seemed almost insane. Yet Jake proposed it with the same casual confidence he used when discussing his scientific theories. He actually believed that working together would produce better results than violence. Over the next several days, Zara found herself staying in the research station, while she tried to understand this strange human perspective. She told herself it was necessary to study her target more thoroughly before elimination. In truth, she was fascinated by Jake's approach to problem solving and his complete lack of appropriate paranoia. Jake treated his would-be assassin like a welcomed guest. He showed her how to operate his equipment and explained human scientific methods with infinite patience. His coffee was indeed terrible, just as he had warned, but she found herself looking forward to their morning conversations over the bitter black liquid. The human had strong opinions about beard maintenance that he shared with surprising passion. He demonstrated proper grooming techniques and explained the cultural significance of facial hair in various Earth societies. Zara listened with growing amusement as Jake described beard competitions and styling products with the same enthusiasm he brought to dimensional physics. In exchange, Zara began sharing stories from her travels across the galaxy. She told Jake about worlds made entirely of crystal, where sound became visible light. She described civilizations that lived in the photospheres of stars, and others that had evolved in the vacuum between galaxies. Her tales of cosmic wonders matched his appetite for discovery perfectly. The assassin also explained Veltar philosophy and military tactics, though she was careful not to reveal strategic information that could endanger her people. Jake listened with the same intense focus he brought to his research. He asked thoughtful questions that showed he was trying to understand rather than judge her culture. Working together, they made rapid progress on understanding the dimensional organisms. Jake's creativity combined with Zara's advanced technical knowledge produced insights that neither could have achieved alone. They developed new theories about interdimensional communication and began designing experiments to test their hypotheses. The research station's small laboratory became a hub of unprecedented cooperation between human ingenuity and Veltar precision. Jake's beard collected stray particles from their experiments, while Zara's claws proved surprisingly gentle when handling delicate equipment. They complemented each other in ways that surprised them both. Zara found herself looking forward to Jake's terrible morning singing as he prepared their daily coffee. The human had a voice that could shatter glass, but his enthusiasm was impossible to resist. She began humming along with melodies from his childhood that he shared during their long working sessions. Jake discovered that Veltar meditation techniques helped him focus during complex calculations. Zara taught him breathing exercises that her people used to maintain clarity during battle. The practices worked just as well for scientific research and helped him push through mental barriers that had previously stopped his progress. Neither of them mentioned the obvious fact that this collaboration could not continue indefinitely. Zara's commanders would eventually demand a mission report, and Jake's colleagues on Earth would notice his extended radio silence. The countdown toward difficult decisions ticked away quietly in the background of their shared work. The breakthrough came during their third week together. Jake and Zara managed to enhance the dimensional organism's communication abilities using a combination of human intuition and Veltar technology. Their success created a communication network that could instantly connect any points in the galaxy without regard for distance or physical barriers. The implications were staggering for both their civilizations. Humans could coordinate their expansion efforts across vast distances, while Veltar forces could communicate with their scattered fleets in real time. The technology could unite the galaxy in unprecedented cooperation or fragment it through more efficient warfare, depending on how it was used. Jake stared at their successful experiment while absently stroking his beard. He realized they had created something that could change the fate of countless worlds and species. The question was whether the galaxy would use their discovery to build bridges or better weapons. The answer might depend on what happened next between a human scientist and his reptilian research. Partner Zara watched Jake contemplate their achievement and felt a strange emotion she could not identify. For the first time in her career, she cared more about protecting her target than completing her mission. The bearded human had become important to her in ways that defied all her training and cultural conditioning. The moment of triumph was tempered by the knowledge that their time together was running out. Soon Zara would have to choose between duty to her empire and loyalty to her unexpected friend. Jake would have to decide whether to trust an alien assassin with technology that could doom or save his entire species. Their research had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, but the hardest challenges still lay ahead. Two very different people from incompatible civilizations had found common ground in scientific curiosity and mutual respect. Whether that would be enough to bridge the gap between their worlds remained to be seen. High Commander Kethvar grew increasingly suspicious as the days passed, without clear updates from his best assassin. Zara's initial reports had been precise and professional, but her recent communications became vague and evasive. She mentioned ongoing surveillance and intelligence gathering, but 3 weeks was far too long for what should have been a simple elimination mission. The commander studied the intercepted transmissions from Europa with growing concern. Jake Moore's research station had gone silent after that first breakthrough discovery. Either the human was dead, and Zara was conducting unnecessary post-mission analysis, or something had gone wrong with the assignment. Neither possibility was acceptable. Kethvar made the decision to dispatch a second team to investigate the situation. Commander Drix now was young and ambitious, with an unblemished record of successful operations. He led a squad of 4 elite warriors who specialized in cleanup missions when primary operations became complicated. Their orders were simple and direct. The backup team would assess the situation on Europa and complete the original mission, if necessary. If Zara had been compromised or converted by human influence, they were authorized to eliminate her along with the target. The Empire could not afford to have experienced operatives defect to potential enemy species. Back on the research station, Jake and Zara continued their work on the Dimensional Communication Project, while carefully avoiding discussions about the future. Both knew their collaboration could not last forever, but neither wanted to be the first to acknowledge that reality. They had fallen into comfortable routines, that felt almost like domestic partnership. Jake still made terrible coffee. Every morning while singing off-key songs from his childhood, Zara had learned to appreciate both the bitter beverage and the enthusiastic musical performances. She found herself humming human melodies during her own meditation sessions and wondering what other Earth customs might be worth adopting. Their scientific partnership had evolved into something deeper and more complex than either had expected. Zara shared stories from her warrior training, while Jake described his university years and the professors who had inspired his love of discovery. They compared childhood experiences, despite growing up on worlds separated by impossible distances. The research itself had progressed beyond their wildest initial hopes. Their enhanced dimensional organisms could now maintain stable communication links across entire star systems. The technology represented a quantum leap in interstellar coordination that would revolutionize commerce, trade, and military operations throughout the galaxy. Jake often caught himself staring at Zara while she worked on delicate calibrations with her massive clawed hands. Her reptilian features had become familiar and comfortable rather than alien and threatening. He found her dry sense of humor and precise analytical mind increasingly attractive as their partnership deepened. Zara noticed how Jake's beard moved when he concentrated on complex problems, and how his eyes lit up when he made new connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. His passion for knowledge and his genuine caring for others were qualities she had never encountered in her violent career. The contrast made her question everything she had believed about purpose and meaning. The crisis arrived without warning on a Tuesday morning while Jake was examining their latest experimental results. Zara's enhanced senses detected the approaching Veltar stealth ships. Long before human instruments could register their presence, her people had come to finish what she had failed to complete. Commander Drixnall's team bypassed the station's basic security systems with contemptuous ease. They found Jake and Zara working side by side in the laboratory with the human, explaining quantum entanglement theory while the assassin carefully adjusted delicate equipment. The scene of peaceful cooperation horrified the military strike team. Drixnall was young enough to still believe completely in Veltar superiority and the righteousness of their expansion methods. Seeing his people's most decorated assassin collaborating with a human target violated everything he understood about proper military conduct and species loyalty. His disgust was evident in every line of his rigid posture. The confrontation forced both Jake and Zara to make choices they had been avoiding for weeks. Drixnall offered Zara one final opportunity to redeem herself by completing her original mission and returning to the Empire with her honor intact. The alternative was to be classified as a traitor and eliminated along with her human accomplice. Jake could have hidden behind his equipment and let Zara handle the situation with her former colleagues. The safe choice would be to stay quiet and hope the Veltar would settle their internal dispute without involving him. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone in the laboratory, including himself. The human scientist stepped directly between Zara and the strike team, despite being completely unarmed and facing 4 heavily armed alien warriors. His hands shook, but his voice remained steady as he formally requested asylum for Zara under Earth's diplomatic protection protocols. He declared that she would not be returning to kill more innocent people for an empire built on fear. Jake's gesture was either incredibly brave or spectacularly suicidal, depending on your perspective. He had no weapons or military training that could help him against professional killers. All he had was moral conviction and a magnificent beard that seemed to bristle with righteous indignation. It should have been laughably inadequate against trained assassins. The standoff that followed stretched for endless seconds as both sides processed this unexpected development. Drixnall had never encountered a target who tried to protect his assigned killer. Jake's declaration of asylum for an enemy agent was unprecedented in Veltar experience. The young commander struggled to understand how anyone could be so foolishly noble. Zara found herself faced with the choice she had been dreading since her first conversation with Jake. She could return to the Empire and resume her life as their premier assassin. Her career would continue, and she would be honored for eventually completing a difficult mission. All she had to do was step aside and let her colleagues eliminate one stubborn, human scientist. The alternative was to abandon everything she had known for 30 years, including her rank, her people, and her sense of identity. Choosing Jake meant becoming an exile with no possibility of return to the only culture she had ever known. It meant trusting her future to a species her people considered dangerous and unpredictable. Zara made her decision by turning her back on Commander Drix now and standing beside Jake Morrison. She destroyed her military communication equipment with her claws and formally renounced her allegiance to the Veltar Empire. Her exact words were that she chose the beard, which confused everyone but somehow perfectly captured the absurdity of the entire situation. The declaration transformed the laboratory into a battlefield as Drix Nal and his team prepared to eliminate both traitors. Jake and Zara positioned themselves back to back, despite the hopeless odds they faced. The human had no combat experience, while the former assassin was outnumbered 4-1 by opponents who knew her fighting techniques intimately. The battle was fierce but brief as Zara proved that her skills had not diminished during her weeks of scientific collaboration. Jake did his best to help by throwing laboratory equipment at their attackers while staying out of his partner's way. His contributions were more enthusiastic than effective, but his willingness to fight for her touched something deep in Zara's warrior heart. When the combat ended, 2 of the strike team members were dead, and Drixnal was badly wounded but still alive. Zara had taken several injuries but remained functional, while Jake sported an impressive collection of cuts and bruises. Their laboratory was destroyed, but they had survived the immediate threat to their partnership. The wounded Veltar commander demanded to know why Zara had chosen exile over honor. She explained that she had learned something from humans that her people had forgotten. Sometimes the greatest strength came from cooperation rather than domination. Sometimes showing mercy led to better outcomes than showing force. Drix now refused to accept such reasoning, even as his injuries bled green blood onto the laboratory floor. He activated an emergency beacon that would bring more Veltar forces to Europa within days. His final act was to ensure that Zara's betrayal would not go unpunished, even if he died from his wounds. Jake and Zara looked at each other across the ruined laboratory and realized their troubles were just beginning. They had chosen each other over their respective peoples, but that choice would bring consequences neither could avoid. The galaxy was about to learn that an assassin and her target had formed an alliance that could change everything about interstellar relations. The immediate crisis was over, but larger conflicts were approaching fast. Jake's beard was singed from the battle, and Zara's scales showed new scars that would never fully heal. Yet both knew they had made the right choice, even though the path ahead remained unclear and dangerous. Their research partnership had become something much more significant than either had planned. Now they would have to fight for the right to continue their work and their relationship against forces that wanted to destroy both. The real test of their bond was about to begin. 6 months after the battle that changed everything, Jake and Zara's research station on Europa had become the most important scientific facility in known space. Their dimensional communication breakthrough had attracted researchers from dozens of civilizations, all eager to work with the famous human Veltar team who had proven that cooperation could achieve more than conquest. The small station had been expanded 3 times to accommodate visiting scientists and their equipment. Jake's original laboratory was now a shrine to the moment when 2 enemies became partners and changed the course of galactic history. Visitors often asked to see the exact spot where Zara had first complimented his beard. The Veltar Empire was experiencing its first major crisis in centuries, as Zara's defection inspired other warriors to question their traditional methods. Some requested transfers to study human behavior while others simply disappeared during routine missions. The concept of choosing cooperation over domination was spreading through their ranks like a virus. High Commander Kethvar had been demoted after the Europa incident became public knowledge. His replacement was more interested in diplomatic solutions than military ones. The Empire's first peace negotiations in over 200 years were scheduled to begin within the month, with Jake and Zara serving as mediators. Jake's terrible morning coffee had become legendary among the research community. Scientists from gas giant civilizations and crystalline worlds all claimed they had learned to appreciate the bitter human beverage. Several species had requested samples to analyze its apparent ability to inspire interstellar cooperation and romance. Zara had discovered that she enjoyed teaching almost as much as she had once enjoyed combat. Her warrior training translated surprisingly well to scientific methodology, and her patience with young researchers was infinite. She had become the station's unofficial mentor for anyone struggling with complex theoretical problems. Their relationship had grown far beyond professional partnership during the months of working together under constant scrutiny. Jake's enthusiasm for discovery matched Zara's precision in execution, creating a dynamic that produced breakthrough after breakthrough. They complemented each other in ways that amazed everyone who worked with them. The dimensional communication network they had developed was now operational across 17 star systems. Trade routes that once took months to coordinate could be managed in real time. Emergency medical assistance could be summoned instantly from the nearest qualified facility, regardless of distance. The galaxy was becoming smaller and more connected every day. Jake still maintained his magnificent beard with religious devotion, though it now sported tiny Veltar honor braids that Zara had woven into the hair during a quiet evening in their shared quarters. The combination of human grooming techniques and reptilian military traditions created a unique style that was being copied by diplomats across known space. Buddy the maintenance robot had been upgraded with advanced artificial intelligence and now served as the station's unofficial ambassador to mechanical species. The little machine had become famous for its ability to translate between biological and digital communication methods. Jake took pride in teaching it new personality quirks during their spare time. The wedding planning had taken months of careful negotiation between human and Veltar customs. Jake wanted a simple ceremony, while Zara insisted on including traditional warrior rituals that involved ceremonial combat and blood oaths. The compromise they reached would be remembered as the most unusual wedding in galactic history. Representatives from 37 different species had requested permission to attend the ceremony. The guest list included former enemies who had learned to respect each other through Jake and Zara's example. Even some Veltar officials who had initially condemned the Union now supported it as a symbol of their empire's evolution. The ceremony itself took place in the expanded laboratory, where they had first met and first worked together. Jake wore traditional Earth formal wear modified to accommodate Veltar ceremonial weapons, while Zara had somehow squeezed her 7-foot frame into a human wedding dress that sparkled with embedded scale patterns. Jake's beard had been braided with metal threads that caught the light as he spoke his vows. He promised to love and protect Zara through all the adventures their partnership would bring. His voice carried across the laboratory to an audience that included some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, all gathered to witness love conquering assassination. Zara's vows were delivered in perfect English mixed with Veltar ceremonial phrases that had never been translated before. She promised to guard Jake's back in battle and his heart in peace for as long as the stars burned in space. Her massive clawed hand held his smaller human one with infinite gentleness as they exchanged rings. The wedding reception featured a bewildering mix of cuisines from across the galaxy. Human comfort food sat beside Veltar warrior rations and crystalline song wines. The cake somehow managed to accommodate both human sweet preferences and reptilian dietary requirements without poisoning anyone. Buddy, the maintenance robot, served as ring bearer because some traditions were too important to change even for an interspecies wedding. The little machine had been decorated with flowers from 17 different worlds and seemed to enjoy the attention from guests who had never seen such an expressive artificial intelligence. Jake's wedding speech included a joke about being the only human who could say his wife was literally sent to kill him and mean it as a term of endearment. The audience of diplomats, warriors, and scientists laughed at the absurdity, while appreciating the deeper truth about finding love in impossible circumstances. Zara responded that she was definitely the only Veltar who had learned that the secret to a good marriage was regular beard maintenance and terrible coffee. Her dry delivery of the line brought down the house, as species who had never heard reptilian humor discovered they enjoyed it immensely. Their story had become legend across the galaxy as proof that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their military might, but their ability to find friendship in the most unlikely places. The tale of the assassin and the scientist was being told in songs and stories on hundreds of worlds. The honeymoon was spent establishing the first joint human Veltar research colony on a previously uninhabitable world. Jake and Zara worked together to terraform the planet using their dimensional organisms and advanced Veltar technology. The colony would serve as a model for future cooperation between their species. Other civilizations had begun sending their own scientist warrior teams to study the Jake and Zara methodology. The idea that combining different perspectives and skills could produce better results than any single approach was revolutionary for species that had spent millennia fighting over resources and territory. The Europa Accords that emerged from their work became the foundation for the first truly galactic government in known history. The treaty was written by partners rather than conquerors and conquered, establishing principles of cooperation that would guide interstellar relations for generations to come. Jake and Zara's laboratory had been preserved exactly as it was on the day they first met. Young couples from across the galaxy made pilgrimages to see where love had conquered assassination and where two impossible people had proved that anything was possible with enough curiosity and courage. Their research continued to produce breakthroughs that benefited every known civilization. The dimensional communication network had evolved into a galaxy-spanning internet that connected minds and hearts across impossible distances. Trade flourished as barriers between species dissolved through better understanding. Years later, when historians tried to explain how the galaxy had transformed from a collection of competing empires into a cooperative federation, they always pointed to the same moment. A human scientist with a magnificent beard had offered coffee to an alien assassin and changed the course of cosmic history with simple kindness. Jake and Zara never stopped being amazed by the chain of events that had brought them together. Their love story proved that sometimes the best way to defeat an enemy was to offer them friendship instead of fighting. Their marriage showed the galaxy that cooperation would always triumph over conquest in the end.